The distant stars burned cold and indifferent as Earth spun silently in the vast expanse of space. The world, once a beacon of power, now stood in the shadows of more dominant civilizations. Technologically advanced, yes, but militarily weak. After decades of peace, Earth had moved away from the weapons of war, choosing diplomacy, culture, and scientific exploration. The great cities of Earth were now symbols of prosperity, not defense. Yet, despite its advancements, Earth had earned the nickname Backwater Planet among the stars. Its voice was seldom heard in the Intergalactic Council, where the more powerful and aggressive species dictated the future of the galaxy. Captain Ella Graves gazed out across the tranquil blue expanse of Earth from her post, a forgotten outpost. On the fringe of known space, her role as a peacekeeper seemed almost laughable now. She was the last officer of Earth's once proud military, stationed at a distant post while the rest of humanity focused on exploration. Her uniform was pristine, but the weight of it felt heavier than it ever had. Earth was no longer a warrior race, no longer a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy had moved on, and Ella couldn't shake the feeling that Earth was being forgotten. Her internal struggle raged. Her duty as a peacekeeper was noble, but deep down she could feel the burning ember of Earth's past legacy, a fire that had long been extinguished by peace and complacency. She had been trained to lead, to protect, but Earth was no longer capable of standing up against the galactic threats looming just beyond the stars. The Raxkal Empire, vast, powerful, and ruthless, looked at Earth as little more than a relic, a species to be dismissed. They had never considered the possibility that Earth might fight back, that humanity might still have the will to survive. They underestimated Earth's resilience. They saw a weakened species, too peaceful, too dependent on diplomacy. But the Raxkal would soon learn the true cost of underestimating humanity. The attack came without warning. Raxkal warships descended like a plague upon Earth's cities, their massive forms blotting out the sun. Energy blasts from the ships tore through Earth's defenses as though they were nothing more than paper. The peaceful, utopian cities, built to withstand natural disasters and climate change, crumbled under the weight of advanced alien technology. Fire rained from the sky as explosions rocked the surface, sending waves of panic through the populace. Ella watched from her command center as the devastation unfolded. A message crackled through the comms, a dire warning from the capital, but it was too late. The Raxkal had already breached Earth's outer defenses. Cities were falling, and military bases were being obliterated in mere minutes. In her heart, Ella knew the truth. Humanity had never been prepared for war. The forces they had once relied on were long gone, forgotten in the age of peace. But as chaos descended, Ella Graves rose to the challenge. She immediately called her team to action. Earth's once-forgotten military bunkers were unearthed, their ancient tech waiting in the shadows. Old but potent weapons were revived, and in a desperate rally, military veterans, rogue scientists, and civilians alike came together, forming a resistance force. Against all odds, Ella's leadership sparked a glimmer of hope in the face of annihilation. This ragtag group, bolstered by ancient tech and bound together by a shared desire to protect their planet, prepared to launch a counterattack against the Raxkal. Using guerrilla tactics and Earth's forgotten weapons, they hit the Raxkal where they least expected. The small victories began to mount, the resistance gaining ground with each assault, proving that humanity still had the strength to fight. Ella stood at the forefront of this new force. She knew they were outnumbered, outgunned, but she also knew that they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their legacy, their place among the stars. Earth had been forgotten, but it would not stay that way. Not while there was breath in her lungs, not while humanity still had the will to fight. As the battles raged on, the resistance uncovered a secret weapon, an interdimensional device, powerful enough to wipe out the Raxkal fleet in one fell swoop. The weapon was risky. It could destroy everything, including Earth itself, but it was their only chance. Ella's heart pounded in her chest as she realized that activating it could mean her death, but if it was the only way to save humanity, then it was a price worth paying. At the moment of truth, Ella stood poised to make the ultimate sacrifice. The interdimensional weapon hummed to life, its power surging through her fingertips. She felt time slow as the immense energy of the weapon pulsed around her, its reality bending. Force ready to engulf the galaxy in an explosion of light and sound. She knew that she would not survive, but in her final moments, Ella Graves knew she had done what was necessary. The weapon activated. In an instant, the Raxkal fleet was obliterated. The Emperor, once confident in his superiority, now saw the truth. Humanity's resilience, its ability to adapt and rise against impossible odds, was stronger than any alien empire. The force of the weapon surged through the fabric of space, and the Raxkal's reign was no more. Ella's sacrifice became the foundation of humanity's new legacy. Earth, once dismissed as weak, now stood as a powerful force in the galaxy. The galaxy had seen humanity's true strength, and in the aftermath of Ella's death, they stood not as victims, but as equals. A statue of Ella Graves was erected on Earth. A symbol of courage and defiance, it stood tall against the stars. The story of her sacrifice was told across the galaxy, inspiring generations of warriors, leaders, and dreamers. No longer would humanity be a forgotten species. Earth stood, tall among the stars. Its once feeble voice now commanded respect. But as Earth's influence expanded across the galaxy, whispers of a new threat began to circulate. The galaxy was vast, and humanity's journey was just beginning. The seeds of future conflicts had been planted, but Earth was no longer the weak, defenseless world it had once been. The age of the Raxkal was over, but the true challenge of the stars awaited. Humanity was ready. The skies above Earth once held the promise of peaceful exploration, the blue planet now resting serenely in the cold expanse of space. Yet the calm was deceiving. Below, humanity's advanced cities hummed with life, a place where technology and science had brought prosperity. But Earth's military had been a relic of the past. As intergalactic peacekeepers and diplomats, Earth's focus had shifted away from defense, leaving the planet defenseless against a true threat. A massive fleet descended from the heavens, tearing through the calm like a blade through silk. Warships, sleek and merciless, cut across Earth's skies with terrifying precision. The Raxkal, an empire built on conquest, had arrived. Their ships, gleaming with alien technology, launched devastating energy blasts that tore through Earth's defenses. The peaceful cities, once symbols of prosperity, now crumbled to dust beneath the assault. Massive explosions ripped through entire districts, and firestorms roared where once peaceful streets stood. The air was thick with smoke and ash, blocking the sun, turning day into night. Ella Graves stood, paralyzed, watching the carnage unfold. She was not in command of Earth's defense anymore. That responsibility had been cast aside long ago when Earth's government chose peace over war. Now, she saw what that decision had cost. There was no military to call upon, no defenses that could hold. The world she had sworn to protect was slipping away into the firestorm. The Raxkal had miscalculated. They thought Earth was weak, defenseless, a harmless relic of the past. They were wrong, and they would soon learn just how wrong they were. As Ella watched the destruction unfold, a surge of fury coursed through her veins. Earth was defenseless, yes, but not defeated. She would not let her planet fall into oblivion. The chaos around her fueled something deeper than anger. It was a sense of purpose. She had to act. But how? Her hands shook as she gripped the comms panel. Earth systems were down, the military scattered, and cities were reduced to rubble. But there was something they hadn't accounted for, Ella, and something humanity still had: hope. Ella stumbled upon a forgotten underground military bunker, sealed off from the world for decades. She entered, her eyes scanning the darkness. Inside, buried beneath dust and rubble, was a treasure trove of old military tech, once cutting edge, now relics of a bygone era. It wasn't much, it wasn't modern, but it was something: tanks, war machines, weapons and relics of Earth's military might, long neglected by history. It was humanity's last hope, and Ella would make it count. She rallied the few who remained: veterans, scientists, civilians, willing to fight for their planet. They may not be soldiers anymore, but they had the will to survive. With Earth's fate hanging in the balance, the resistance began its fight. Ella, now at the forefront, led the charge with a group of brave souls who dared to stand against the unstoppable force of the Raxkal. Armed with nothing but outdated weaponry and a fierce resolve, they mounted a desperate counterattack. Guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run strikes. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Raxkal ships, once thought invincible, began to fall, one by one. The resistance had done the impossible. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. Ella stood over the smoking wreckage of the last downed Raxkal ship. There was no time for celebration. The battle was far from over, and their fight had only just begun. But in that moment she knew that humanity had not only survived, they had made a statement. Earth would not bow to any empire, no matter how advanced. This was just the beginning of a war for the survival of the human race. The Raxkal had launched their attack expecting to crush a helpless, forgotten species. What they found instead was something far more dangerous: a people willing to fight for their survival. Ella's leadership had turned the tide, but humanity's true strength lay in its ability to adapt. It was a lesson that the Raxkal would soon regret learning. The roar of the Raxkal warships filled the sky like thunder, their sleek alien designs cutting through Earth's once dominant atmosphere. The first salvo of destruction rained down upon the planet, tearing into Earth's defenses with devastating ease. These warships, massive and unforgiving, launched energy blasts that ripped apart cities, their cutting-edge technology overwhelming every barrier Earth had spent centuries perfecting. The high-tech shields designed to protect Earth from cosmic hazards failed to even slow the onslaught. The invaders were ruthless and swift, systematically eliminating Earth's key defense points before humanity could mount any meaningful resistance. The streets of major cities, once symbols of peace and progress, now lay in ruins. Buildings that had stood for generations crumbled to ash, and the air was thick with the acrid stench of burning structures. Civilians scattered in panic, unable to understand the magnitude of the threat they faced. Earth's military, once a proud symbol of strength, had been reduced to a joke, powerless in the face of the Raxkal's technological superiority. The world, which had long ignored the dangers of a galaxy that seemed indifferent to their existence, now found itself fighting for survival against an enemy that considered them weak, expendable. Ella Graves stood at the heart of the chaos, her eyes fixed on the hell unfolding around her. The city she had once called home was no longer recognizable. The air was heavy with dust and smoke, the ground trembling under the force of the attack. Her heart pounded in her chest as she realized the full extent of the Raxkal's plans. This wasn't just a conquest, it was an extinction event. Earth, her home, had been cast aside by the galaxy, and now it was being erased. Her breath caught as she recognized the painful truth. Humanity was alone, but she wouldn't let that be the end of it. As the destruction continued, Ella's mind raced. The Raxkal had underestimated Earth. They had seen a weakened species, an Old power with no teeth, but Ella knew something they didn't. The will to survive burned fiercely in humanity's heart. She would find a way to fight back. Against all odds, she would ensure humanity's legacy wasn't erased. In the aftermath of the assault, Earth's military forces lay in disarray. The planet's once unified systems were now fractured and scrambling. To recover, Earth's leadership was splintered, many of the world's key commanders now either dead or scattered. But amidst the rubble, Ella discovered something that reignited the flame of hope. Hidden beneath the surface of Earth, forgotten military bunkers contained technology that hadn't seen the light of day in decades. The sight of these old war machines tucked away in the darkened bowels of the Earth was almost surreal. The systems were ancient, their designs outdated compared to the Raxkal's advanced weaponry, but they were a lifeline. Tanks, cloaking devices, and powerful AI-driven war machines that once made Earth a formidable force, now gathering dust. In the shadows, it wasn't much, but it was something to fight with. Ella gathered a small but determined group, a ragtag collection of military veterans, civilians, and rogue scientists. Together they formed a resistance, drawn together by a common goal: to defend Earth from the brutal invaders. The weapons were old, but in their hands they would become the foundation of humanity's fight. Ella was determined. She would not let Earth fall. She couldn't. Ella looked over the soldiers, her team. Their faces were determined yet weary. They had nothing left to lose, but that gave them strength. With every small victory, they could feel the spark of hope reigniting within them. As their first few counterattacks succeeded, Ella saw it. Humanity was not as weak as the galaxy believed. They were not just surviving, they were adapting. They were fighting back. But there was more work to be done. Earth's tech was a patchwork, cobbled together from the past and present, but it would have to do. Ella's mind raced with possibilities, how to use their limited resources against the enemy's overwhelming power. The mission was clear. They had to adapt or die. They couldn't afford failure. As the resistance continued to organize, Ella made a daring move. They recovered an experimental weapon, an interdimensional device that had once been a top-secret project, shrouded in uncertainty and risk. It was humanity's last hope, but its success was far from guaranteed. The weapon had the potential to wipe out the Raxkal fleet in one fell swoop, but it could also destroy everything in its vicinity. Ella knew the stakes. If they failed, Earth would fall. In the heart of their base, Ella and her team worked tirelessly to prepare for the weapon's activation. Their small victories had brought them a sliver of hope, but the Raxkal were relentless. The battle wasn't over. Humanity's resilience would be tested to its limits. Ella's leadership and the will of her people would determine whether Earth could endure or be erased from the stars. As the Raxkal launched their next wave of attacks, Ella stood firm, her resolve hardened. She knew that this moment, this struggle, would define humanity's place in the galaxy. She had seen the horrors of war, the cost of peace, and now she would lead her people into a fight for survival. There was no turning back. The weapon was their only chance, and humanity's future hung in the balance. But as she prepared for the final assault, a betrayal within her ranks threatened everything. General Andros, a trusted leader in the resistance, was revealed to have been a covert sympathizer of the Raxkal. His sabotage had already set their efforts back, and now his loyalty to the enemy put everything they had worked for at risk. The resistance was fractured, the trust between them shattered. Ella's resolve was tested as she faced the harsh reality that the true enemy wasn't just outside, it was within. Ella would have to fight not just for Earth's survival, but for the very heart of the resistance. She couldn't allow the Raxkal or a traitor to break her people. She would find a way to turn this betrayal into their greatest strength, even if it meant making the hardest choices of her life. The battle was far from over, But humanity had already proven one thing. They would not be forgotten. The Rack's call. Fleet descended upon Earth like an unstoppable storm, blotting out the sky with their massive warships. The alien vessels, sleek and ominous, unleashed waves of destructive energy that tore through Earth's defenses with terrifying ease. Cities, once proud symbols of human achievement, crumbled in mere seconds, their towering skyscrapers reduced to rubble. The ground shook beneath the force of each blast, and the air turned thick with smoke and the smell of burning debris. Panic spread like wildfire across the planet as the true scope of the attack became clear. Earth, once seen as a peaceful sanctuary, was now the target of annihilation. In the midst of the destruction, Ella Graves stood at the forefront of humanity's last stand. The Resistance, a ragtag group made up of soldiers, scientists and civilians, had already begun mounting their desperate defense. But the power disparity between Earth's defenders and the Rakskal's invincible fleet was staggering. Energy shields that once protected Earth's cities fell like paper before the alien warships, and the weapons of Earth's forces were no match for the advanced, energy-based artillery the Rakskal wielded. Ella's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the carnage unfold. There was no time to waste. Earth's military infrastructure was in tatters, and its most powerful defenses had been obliterated in minutes. She had to act, and fast. The survival of humanity now rested in her hands. She turned to the men and women beside her, their faces a mixture of determination and fear. They had no choice but to fight back, despite the overwhelming odds. She would not let Earth be forgotten. They would rise, or they would die trying. Ella led the charge, organizing the resistance into a well-coordinated assault on the Rakskal's heavily fortified stronghold. Their goal was clear: infiltrate the heart of the alien empire and strike. At its core, armed with whatever weapons they could scrounge, including Earth's ancient forgotten tech, they pushed forward, fighting their way through alien defenses. The battle was fierce, but each step they took deeper into the heart of the Empire brought them closer to their ultimate objective, the defeat of the Rakskal. As the resistance breached the outer perimeter of the Rakskal's stronghold, Ella found herself face to face with the cold, imposing figure of the Rakskal Emperor. His massive form loomed over her, surrounded by the advanced technology of his empire. Holographic displays, towering energy shields, and weapons of unimaginable power. His eyes glinted with contempt as he looked down at Ella, a mere human soldier standing in his presence. "You think you can stop me?" the Emperor sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Your kind is weak, nothing more than ants beneath the boot of my empire." Ella's fists clenched at her sides, her heart beating faster. She had heard these words before, from the mouths of those who underestimated humanity. The Rakskal thought they could crush Earth without consequence, but they had no idea what they were up against. "We're not as weak as you think," Ella replied, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "And we're not backing down, not this time." The Emperor's mocking laughter echoed through the chamber, but Ella didn't flinch. She knew this was the moment where humanity would show the Rakskal that they were not to be underestimated. She would make sure of it. The confrontation between Ella and the Emperor escalated quickly. Energy blasts filled the room as the two sides clashed. Human ingenuity against the cold, calculated power of the Rakskal. Ella's mind raced as she maneuvered through the chaos, trying to stay one step ahead of the Emperor's attacks. She knew that this was it. If she didn't stop the Rakskal now, humanity would be lost. With a final defiant act, Ella activated the interdimensional weapon. As the device powered up, the room seemed to shudder with the raw energy coursing through it. She could feel the intense heat building, the air growing thicker with every passing second. The weapon was their last hope, but it was also their greatest risk. Ella knew it could destroy everything in its path, including herself. But she didn't hesitate. She pressed the final sequence, knowing the cost. Time seemed to slow as the weapon erupted with a blinding flash of energy. The Raxkal fleet, massive and imposing just moments before, was obliterated in an instant. The space around them seemed to warp and distort as the interdimensional energy tore through the fabric of reality itself. The blast expanded outward, consuming everything in its path. The Emperor's final words, filled with disbelief and fury, were lost in the chaos as the energy wave swept across the battlefield. Ella, standing at the epicenter of the explosion, felt the intense pull of the energy as it surged around her. She knew the price she had paid. Her life, her leadership, her sacrifice, it was all worth it. Humanity had won. The Raxkal were no more, and their reign of terror had ended. But in that moment of victory, Ella knew there would be no return for her. As the weapons blast dissipated, leaving only the silence of victory, the remnants of the Raxkal's empire lay in ruins. Earth's people, though battered and broken, had proven that they were not weak. They had faced an enemy far superior in technology and numbers and had emerged victorious. The sacrifice of Ella Graves would be remembered across the galaxy, and humanity's place in the stars was no longer a question. They were not just survivors, they were warriors. Ella's final moments were filled with the knowledge that humanity's strength had been tested and found unyielding. The galaxy would never forget the human spirit. It was a force to be reckoned with, one that no empire, no matter how powerful, could ever extinguish. The stars shimmered like an endless sea of possibilities as Earth, once a quiet and forgotten planet in the vast galaxy, now stood tall. The damage done by the Raxkal's brutal invasion was undeniable, but it was also a catalyst for change. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's strength for far too long, and now, in the aftermath of their greatest loss, the universe would never look at Earth the same way again. The loss of Ella Graves, the woman who had given everything for her people, weighed heavily on the collective soul of humanity. Her sacrifice was felt in every corner of the Earth, in every quiet morning room, in every whispered story of a hero who had led them from the brink of annihilation. But even in the silence of grief, there was a sense of respect, a quiet reverence for what had been achieved. Humanity had faced the ultimate test and against all odds had emerged victorious. The planets that once dismissed Earth as insignificant now looked at it with respect and even awe. The Intergalactic Council, once hesitant to grant Earth a voice, now recognized the planet as a force to be reckoned with. Earth was no longer just a participant in galactic affairs. It was a key player, a symbol of resilience and unity. The species, who had once seen Earth's military weakness as a point of ridicule, now extended their hands in partnership, eager to stand together against future threats. The rebuilding of Earth began in earnest. Cities that had been reduced to rubble were slowly rising again, not just from the ashes, but with the pride of a species who had fought for their right to exist. Earth was no longer a planet of peace alone. It was a symbol of strength and determination, a beacon for all those who had ever been underestimated. But as the rebuilding process began, the weight of the loss still lingered. Ella's absence was felt by all who had fought alongside her. The memory of her leadership, of her unyielding spirit, became a rallying cry for humanity. The sacrifices made were not in vain, and her legacy was not one of defeat, but of an unbreakable will. Earth was stronger now, not because of what they had won, but because of the heart that Ella had infused into the resistance. Humanity's newfound strength and place in the galaxy was not just a victory for Earth, but for the future of the galaxy itself. New alliances were forged with species that had once seen humanity as a primitive, isolated race. Earth's voice now carried weight in the Council, and its contributions, both political and technological, began to shape the direction of galactic affairs. Where once humanity had been at the mercy of others, they were now seen as equals, their expertise sought after by those who recognized the value of Earth's unique perspective. The destruction of the Raxkal Empire had been only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers and potential threats. Earth, however, had proven that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit could shine brightest. The potential for humanity to lead, to inspire, was no longer a distant dream, but a present reality. They had learned, adapted, and evolved, and now the universe would know that humanity would no longer stand in the shadows. The future was uncertain, yes, but humanity had already faced its greatest challenge, and it had emerged victorious. With the lessons learned from their struggle, humanity was ready to take its place among the stars, not as a forgotten backwater planet, but as a respected and powerful force for good in the galaxy. And so, Earth's new role in the galactic community began, with the foundations of peace and unity laid by the sacrifices of one brave woman and the will of an entire species that would never back down. The echoes of their struggle would resonate across the galaxy for generations to come, a reminder that humanity's resilience, creativity, and strength would never be underestimated again. Earth was no longer just a speck in the vastness of space. It was a beacon of hope, a symbol of what could be achieved when humanity came together in the face of the unknown. And though the shadows of the past still lingered, Earth was now poised to shape the future, to guide the galaxy toward a new era of peace, unity, and strength. The towering statue of Ella Graves stood in the heart of New York City, visible from every angle, an awe-inspiring monument to human resilience. Crafted from a rare, intergalactic material, it gleamed under the light of a setting sun, each chiseled detail capturing the strength and determination of the woman who had led humanity through its darkest hour. The figure was larger than life, her gaze fixed forward, eyes filled with unwavering resolve. Earth had not only been saved by her, but had been reborn. Humanity was now an unstoppable force in the galaxy. As ships of all sizes from different civilizations hovered above, casting their shadows on the ground below, the story of Ella Graves echoed through the galaxy, told in every corner, from distant spaceports to star systems across the known universe. Her sacrifice had ignited something greater than a fight for survival. It had sparked a movement. Earth's quiet reputation as a backwater planet was forever changed. No longer underestimated, humanity now stood proud, a beacon of hope and strength. The statue's placement in the city was deliberate. At the center of a bustling, rebuilt metropolis, the heart of Earth's resurgence. Where once the planet had been weak, its infrastructure crumbling, Earth now sat at the helm of a new era, connected to a galactic council that had once regarded it as inconsequential. Now its voice was heard. The galaxy had witnessed what humanity was capable of, and it had never seen anything like it before. The memories of Ella's final moments and her leadership would be a guide, a shining example for future generations across the stars. Humanity's place among the stars was no longer questioned. Earth had become one of the key powers in the galaxy, no longer a secondary player. In the grand council halls, where once Earth's representatives had been overlooked, now the planets of the galaxy deferred to them. New alliances were forged, and long-standing rivalries began to shift. Earth was no longer isolated. It was now a central force, ready to shape the future. The balance of power had shifted. Humanity's influence, bolstered by its rebuilt military, was now integral to the defense of the galaxy. Advanced technologies that had once been stored in secret bunkers were now in use, shaping new defense systems that the galaxy had never known. The political and economic relationships between Earth and other species were strong, with Earth's resources and intelligence becoming highly sought after. Earth was a vital part of the intergalactic council, respected by all who had once doubted it. It was no longer seen as weak. It was no longer an afterthought. Yet even in the wake of this monumental shift, the whispers began. From the farthest reaches of space, beyond the known galaxy, something stirred. A new power, unknown and mysterious, had begun to rise, its influence growing steadily. The Council had no information about this new threat, but the signs were unmistakable. A new chapter had begun, but humanity's victory was not an end. It was the beginning of a new journey. The peace they fought for would not last forever. Challenges, bigger than anything they had faced before, loomed just beyond the horizon. The future was uncertain, but as Ella's legacy lived on, humanity's resolve was unbreakable. Earth, once a forgotten planet, now stood as a beacon of hope and strength in the galaxy. Humanity had proven its worth, but the galaxy was vast, and the unknown awaited. The journey was far from over, and the seeds of future challenges were already planted in the stars. Humanity would face them, just as they had faced the Raxkull, head-on, with ingenuity, resilience, and the strength of their will. And so, as Earth's influence continued to grow and new alliances were formed, the universe watched. Humanity had not only survived, it had thrived. But what lay ahead, no one could yet know. The galaxy had only begun to understand the power of Earth.